what does Baldur's Gate 3 prove? Does it prove that it's a fantastic video game that's been developed with a lot of passion, effort, and so much more? Yes, it does prove that. But at the same time, having watched IGN's video of that one person saying that this is a 10 out of 10 game and that microtransactions are a big problem. It is a big problem because Baldur's Gate 3 is basically what I would say is a video game that celebrates the hard work of nerds, of people that love fantasy, of people that love D&D. Now I am just an outsider. I've never been involved in D&D as much as I would want, and I've never been around a group of people that I would love to play D&D with. But Baldur's Gate 3 is proving the fact that you don't need to make a video game that is cutting content, that you don't need to make DLC all the time. You can get a complete game. You can get games that are completely successful. Games that have been put into a lot of amount of effort. It's not just upper management just raising prices just because they want to, or upper management just promoting XYZ. Let's not forget that the video games industry has been in a state of turmoil. Now what is this turmoil? Of all sorts of nasty things. But that's not the main point here. The main point here is that video games for a long time now have been releasing in very bad states. They've been releasing in terms of, bad launches, in terms of so many unmitigated disasters. Now, who is this the fault of? Is the AAA game industry truly to blame? To a degree it is. Are all the developers working in it to blame? No, it's not. Because there is a lot of great and talented developers working both at indie and AAA game studios, and I am sure that they want to bring a video game that ultimately sells. But what happens when the video game industry is also dominated by sellers, by marketers that only see profits, that don't play the games that you should be able to play? Then that is also a serious problem as well. I can't claim to know everything. What I can definitely say is that Baldur's Gate is proving the fact you can make a complete game. A game without microtransactions, a game without a lot of cut content. But of course, Baldur's Gate 3 also does have a lot of cut content. That is true with every video game. Even the most greatest of the video games of all time, Witcher 3, that would also have cut content as well. And it's not just the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 had been spent in like 3 years of early access. It's also because their developers took their time to replay their own game hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Right? Now if you're making a product, you're writing a book, and you think to yourself for a second, okay, I've spent so much time and effort into it, I'm not going to bother about it anymore. Because there's a certain timeline to a video game. Let's say within the first 2-3 years, you develop the concept art, you develop the plans, you start talking, and then maybe in the first 3-4 years, you then begin to develop the game, the code, everything about it. And then, let's say within the first 4 to 5 years, I keep saying first, but that's not how it should be. Anyway, but say that you develop that game. In the 4 or 5 years, you begin to develop the game, you begin to test, etc. You develop the game, and then when it's time for beta testing, you do bring out the testers. But this is where the AAA games industry has slightly come a bit ahead of itself. Because video game testers are not really that paid. They really should be paid, because these are the guys that quality test your game. They need to be paid a higher wage, in my opinion. There's also the fact that sometimes I think some video game developers will not want to keep on testing their own games so often. In the sense that they could be testing their games, yep, but they've also got a timeline, then they got to move on to a new project. This is more or less corporate reality. This is more or less what video games are doing in general. Does this apply to every single video game company? No, obviously not. And I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm making more of a generic statement. Of course, I'm just a small YouTuber who's in the fringes of the internet. But at the same time, even I can appreciate when AAA video game companies do really make great games. I think the reason why Baldur's Gate 3 succeeded is this. In 2020, Xbox promised us so much more. They promised us all these big games, and there's going to be so many new RPGs and all of that type of stuff. Recently, what I think Xbox has found is that these games take years to develop and years to make. You can't just release them all in one go, and you can't keep on delaying them. And Baldur's Gate 3 is filling that void. It's filling that void of those big RPG games that were promised by Xbox and also by PlayStation as well. To a certain degree, I would say, but I think the onus lies more on Xbox. With Xbox, we were promised Avowed. Avowed is going to take some time. Fable is going to take some time. Like the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take till 2026 or 7. It's going to take that long. So what did Baldur's Gate 3 do? Baldur's Gate 3 is fulfilling that expectation. Baldur's Gate 3 is basically saying, hey, if there's so many RPGs out there, doesn't matter. Why can't while it was said no, while the head of Baldur's Gate said no, while the game director of Baldur's Gate said that we are not, that's while the game director of Baldur's Gate said we are, something, when the game director of your studio says that video game standards are meant to be broken every day, then he's absolutely right. They are meant to be broken. There must be video games that evolve, video games that showcase new, innovative graphics, not just graphics but gameplay as well. Video games that immerse you into a new world. With Fable, with Avowed, with all these video games that I really want to play, and I really hope they come out at some point. I would like a sort of Baldur's Gate model. I would really like something where you see video game developers taking the trust, building on early access, working on it. I don't think it would hurt, because AAA video game companies have huge amounts of money. Alright, huge amounts of money. And when I mean huge amounts, I mean the type of amount of money that you can't even dream of. It's the same with all other companies around the world as well, in other different forms of industry. They could do this. They could hire the best players, the best beta testers, the best YouTubers to basically beta test their games without having to pay them for, let's say, beta testing, because that's what video games releases are becoming in a way. Look at Star Wars, the new Star Wars game itself, right? So that's what I'm saying. Why can't Baldur's Gate 3 be a new standard? When Witcher 3 was a new standard, why can't this video game be a new standard? And this is what I say to the developers. It's basically a wake-up call to stop releasing games in bug-ridden launches, stop releasing games expecting customers to pay more and they get less, and stop downgrading and cutting things when that shouldn't be the case in the first place. That's what it's meant to be. That's what video games are supposed to be. It should be a complete experience from start to finish. But we live in a day where video games will be complete either by the end of the cycle, or they'll be complete in a very rare circumstance. So it depends at the end of the day. It depends. We are just making this video game that you guys can play. We crafted it, we did it, and we made it with so much effort and passion. And Baldur's Gate 3 also has many bugs to fill, bugs to improve. It's a very buggy game in many areas where I've played. Now, when I say buggy, I don't mean buggy as if it's so bad breaking that it will break everything. I mean more in terms of performance issues. That's about it. And Baldur's Gate 3 is showing that with well voice acting, with good storytelling, it can be done. And some video games don't need to be made if they don't need to be made. Like Lord of the Rings Gollum didn't need to be made. Even the developers were saying that we don't want this. We want this game not to succeed because this game is not what we want to make, and it sucks because there are some games out there that truly don't need to be made at all. There are some games out there that truly need to be made, like Baldur's Gate 3, and there are some games that are just made just for the sake of it. Games that just, yes, they've written the story, they've written it, but they've just, you can tell there's not a lot of passion in it. You can tell. And they just released it as a filler product. And this is going on in movies now. And you have the AI strike that's going on. because the fear is this, that if writers can't come up with good stories, then AI can obviously come up with better stories. And this is also a fear as well, because this could also obviously replace voice actors. This could go into so many other things. But the point is not to talk about AI. The point is that Baldur's Gate was developed with a lot of passion. I remember I was watching a video of a Baldur's Gate writer, and he mentioned that they had to obviously retest the game many times. If you want to make a good product, you have to make sure it's foolproof. You have to keep testing your game, even if you're at your wit's end, or if you're familiar with what you're making, it can still be a frustrating experience. And at the end, it's just this: when have you ever played a video game that basically makes you want to challenge yourself? And at the end, it comes to this: when have you ever played a video game that has made you want to challenge yourself? A video game that makes you escape your social life? A video game that basically immerses you into a story that says, enter this new world. This video game is like Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of world building, in terms of immersion, right? There's plenty of dialogue choices, and there's some excellent writing I've seen in this video game. There's some also weak dialogue as well. There's some filler dialogue as well, but that's to be given, because time and effort and no budget constraints, no crunch time, which is a big issue as well. These issues all matter, and this is what I'm saying. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to fulfill that itch. While we wait for Elder Scrolls 6, this game is here already. I mean, if Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take 20 years in the making, I've got this game, and there's plenty of Skyrim mods, Sky Oblivion, so many Skyrim mods that are coming out. There's Fallout mods, so there's so much more. I think the real answer to all of this is the video games industry needs to deliver what they've promised, deliver on the products they have promised, and everything is fine, to a degree. But when we have to wait, then there will be indie studios like Larian Studios that will come up, and they will step up to the plate. It's only inevitable. This is a fantastic video game, and quite frankly, it is the only one where you can romance a bear. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm just going to say at the end, it has proved something incredible. What has it proved? It proves you can make a video game with a huge amount of effort, love, and passion, and you don't. And I keep repeating myself, but I'll say it again. You don't need budget constraints. You don't need your project being cancelled. You don't need so much interference. You can make a video game that is complete without microtransactions, without DLC. Well, you do need DLC, of course, but without microtransactions, really. Anyway, so that's been my video. I just wanted to make this video. I just wanted to say what I feel about Baldur's Gate 3. I know there are 100 videos out there talking about why Baldur's Gate 3 is absolutely incredible. Absolutely a masterpiece. Why it kills the love for other RPGs, blah 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 blah. I just wanted to get my opinion said. And if Asmongold or Josh Strive Hayes or any of those big streamers ever react to one of my videos, or maybe something like this, I would really consider it an honor. So yeah, don't forget to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I shall see you on the next video.